Hello everyone, my name is Shobna Menon and as promised I am up with another lecture on the basics of Indian polity. Now in my previous lecture I had touched upon the principles of constitutionalism and its presence in the West as well as in India. Now moving on, let us start covering the history of Indian constitution. Now अगर आप हिस्ट्री को ऑब्जेक्टिवली देखोगे, ऑब्जेक्टिवली पढ़ोगे तो ऑफ कोर्स बोरिंग लगेगा बिकॉज यू हैव टू रिमेंबर लॉट ऑफ फैक्ट्स एंड फिगर्स. सो लेट अस ट्राई टू मेक इट स्लाइटली इंटरेस्टिंग एंड कन्वर्ट इट इनटू अ स्टोरी. Okay, and as you are well aware of the fact that every story has a lot of main characters, and of course that is equally true in the case of the history of the Indian Constitution. But the first and the foremost main protagonist of our story as far as the Indian Constitution is concerned is none other than the East India Company, right? Because the genesis of East India Company led to a series of events that resulted in the people of India giving to themselves a very sacred document called the Constitution of India, right? So let us start with the genesis of the company till say the year 1773. Why do we pick this year? Because before 1773 the company enjoyed a lot of autonomy, independence and negligible interference from the crown. However, after that year the crown, that is the king or the queen, started exerting a lot of influence over the administration of the company, right? So we start with the year 1600. To be specific, we start with 31st of December 1600, where the East India Company was formed. How was it formed? By a royal charter being signed by Queen Elizabeth I, clearly stating that the East India Company had monopoly trading rights over India as well as certain parts of Southeast Asia, right? Of course, हर एक कंपनी का एक स्ट्रक्चर होता है, हर एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का स्ट्रक्चर होता है और ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी का भी एक सॉलिड स्ट्रक्चर था जो इस चार्टर में क्लियरली स्टेट किया था. सो in this case, the East India Company was comprised of a governor at the head with 24 members surrounding it. So 24 plus 1 governor is equal to total of 25 members. And these 25 members were called the Court of Directors. ये नाम याद रखना, Court of Directors. Okay? Now, of course, the business was pretty much unremarkable and stable for a lot of years until 1669 because it got its breakthrough in the later part of the 17th century. And in 1669, the East India Company was allowed to set up factories in the three main presidencies of India back then, which were Bombay, Madras and Calcutta, right? And the East India Company set up factories in these three presidencies. Above that, the Charter Act of 1669 also allowed the East India Company to govern Bombay and its citizens, right? So please remember these trivial facts that 1669 allowed the company, empowered the company to pass ordinances, that is a type of law for the purpose of governance of Bombay and its citizens. Okay, Bombay back then was a very small, unremarkable place. It is not the megalopolis that you observe to be right now. Then of course let us move on to 1677, a very important year again because economically the company was allowed to mint currency. It was allowed to print coins, right? And that was a very important milestone for the East India Company. The next one is coming up on 1683. The Charter Act of 1683 allows the company to declare wars, right? It empowers the company to declare wars and enter into treaties. Back then, company would always have to ask the permission of the crown as far as exercising its military prowess was concerned. But abhi Charter Act of 1683 के बाद the East India Company was allowed to make decisions, allowed autonomy to make decisions on whether to declare wars and which treaties to ignore and which to enter, right? Of course, we had the year 1707. Now this was not directly related to the East India Company, but of course 1707 में a very important event had occurred. क्या हुआ 1707 में? A very important ruler passed away, Aurangzeb passed away and the British took advantage of the disunity prevailing over those regions, right? Before we move on to understanding how, we have another year to cover in between. This was 1726. By 1726, each of the presidencies, that is Madras, Calcutta and Bombay, had their own governors. Okay? And these governors had their own councils. And these governors could pass laws and ordinances for their respective regions. Of course, ये जो भी laws उन्होंने pass किए, they could be effective only with the permission of the court of directors. तो please अपना hierarchy याद रखना कि first come the court of directors, only then the governors of each of these presidencies. So the court of directors managing the East India Company are way more powerful than the governors of each of these presidencies. Okay? Then of course we had the very, very important Battle of Plassey on the 23rd of June 1757, where Siraj-ud-Dowla, the Nawab of Bengal, was defeated by a British army led by Robert Clive. And of course, the Nawab of Bengal was replaced by the commander-in-chief, and his name was Mir Jafar. Of course, we'll get into the details later. But the Nawab of Bengal was replaced, and for a few years, the British enjoyed the might over the territory. Of course, in 1764, another important battle occurred. This was the Battle of Buxar. And Battle of Buxar was important because the might of the three major rulers, that is Shah Alam II, the Mughal Emperor, the Nawab of Awadh and the Nawab of Bengal. Okay, these three people waged a war against the British army yet again, and yet again the British army won the second time as well. And this time the Diwani rights were granted. The Diwani rights are basically rights over revenue and civil justice. And the rights over revenue and civil justice, also called Diwani rights, were granted to the British, thus marking their official military prowess and the accession of territories to its name. Okay, so these are the events that happened. 1764, Battle of Buxar, where the Allahabad Treaty 1765 was formed with the Mughal Emperor, where the Diwani rights were granted in return for a meager amount of pension, around 26 lakhs suppose. So these are the events that took place till 1773. I hope you understood. Please like, share and subscribe if you've liked it. Thank you so much for watching. Good day.